All right, let's jump right into it. Today, we are unpacking the complexities of the International Accounting Standards Board's proposed amendments to IAS 28. But don't worry, we're not just going to sit here and read you the rules. Instead, we're diving straight into some really expert commentary provided by GAAP Advisors, who recently published a fascinating response to the IASB's exposure draft. Let's start with a little thought experiment. Think about this for a second. How much chaos can a single, seemingly harmless word like similar actually cause in global corporate accounting? Well, you'd be surprised. It turns out, when you write a vague word like that into an international standard, it can create massive headaches, total ambiguity, and completely diverse reporting practices for global businesses. To navigate this mess, we're looking directly at a fantastic deep dive by GAAP Advisors. They recently submitted a highly focused structural response to the IASB's exposure draft regarding the fair value option for investments in associates and joint ventures. And their commentary is great because it doesn't just critique the draft, it offers a really compelling, dynamic framework to actually fix the ambiguity. Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to hit the fair value debate, defining similar entities, expanding the fair value option, fluidity and measurement methods, and finally, alignment with IFRS 18. Let's get to it. First up, the fair value debate, reviewing the IASB exposure draft. So looking at the IASB's exposure draft, the core issue really boils down to paragraphs 18 and 19 of IAS 28. It asks a pretty fundamental question. Who exactly is permitted to measure an investment in an associate or joint venture at fair value through profit or loss? The stakes here are huge, and they center entirely on this choice. Traditionally, you know that investments in associates are measured using the equity method. But certain entities are allowed a fair value option, letting them measure the investment at fair value through profit or loss. Having this choice, it can drastically alter how a company's financial health is represented on its income statement. Moving on to defining similar entities. And honestly, the big problem with vague terminology? Right now, the wording limits the fair value option to a venture capital organization, a mutual fund, a unit trust, and here's the kicker, similar entities. GAAP Advisors hits the nail on the head here. They point out that without defining what similar actually means, making an informed judgment is practically impossible. They propose tossing out that list of specific nouns and using a clear operational definition instead. Entities having a main business activity of investing in particular types of assets. And this lack of clarity has massive real-world consequences. As GAAP Advisor states, lack of definition or guidance on types of entities would result in diversity in practices. If corporate accountants across the globe interpret similar entities differently, financial statements completely lose their comparability. An investor literally wouldn't be able to easily compare a firm in London with one in Tokyo because they're playing by slightly different interpretations of the exact same rule. So, how do we fix it? That brings us to expanding the fair value option and GAAP Advisors' two-pronged solution. But real quick, before we look at that solution, let's refresh a crucial piece of IFRS 13 jargon. Level 1 inputs. These are quoted prices, completely unadjusted, in active markets for identical assets that the entity can access at the measurement date. Think of a highly traded public stock. It's perfectly transparent, verifiable, and leaves zero room for guesswork. Building on that, GAAP Advisors recommends opening up the fair value option to two very specific groups. First, entities whose main business activity is investing. Second, and this is the big expansion here, any entity holding investments where those highly transparent level 1 inputs are available. Now, why is that second prong such a game changer? Well, because it actually reflects economic reality. This recommendation allows your standard, non-investment corporate entities that just happen to hold transparent, actively traded investments in an associate to accurately present the income and expense from those investments right there in their operating category. It provides maximum clarity to absolutely anyone reading the financial statements. Next up, fluidity in measurement methods. We're talking about accounting for a dynamic business journey. Look, we all know business is not static, right? A company might spin up a new investing division or shut one down. An associate company might go public, meaning level 1 inputs suddenly appear out of nowhere. Or it might be taken private, meaning those inputs vanish. GAAP Advisors strongly argues that the option to use fair value should absolutely not be permanently locked in only at initial recognition. So they map out exactly how this fluidity should work in practice. If an entity commences an investing activity, or, and this is key, if level 1 inputs suddenly become available for an existing investment, they should be allowed to switch to the fair value option. Any difference between the old carrying amount and the new fair value? It's simply recognized in profit or loss. It perfectly adapts to the new reality. On the flip side, look at the incredibly strict logic for stopping the fair value option. You can only cease fair value measurement if the main business activity ceases and level 1 inputs are no longer available. Both of those things must be true. If they are, you stop the fair value measurement and you seamlessly transition back to the equity method, using the fair value on that specific date as your new baseline cost. It just makes logical sense. Finally, let's talk about alignment with IFRS 18, specifically the effective date and transition. Question 2 in the IASB's exposure draft asks point-blank about the effective date and transition for these proposed amendments to paragraphs 18 and 19. And on this front, GAAP Advisors is in complete 100% agreement with the IASB. They are pushing for a completely seamless transition, meaning these amendments to IAS 28 should be applied at the exact same time and on the exact same basis as the new IFRS 18 standards. This unified timeline prevents massive, completely avoidable administrative headaches for standard setters and accountants alike. But just before wrapping up their letter, GAAP Advisors drops this fascinating, almost philosophical critique. They note, the conceptual basis for measuring investment in associate and joint venture as per equity method is not clear. They point out that it's actually highly debatable whether the equity method is truly a measurement method at all, or just a simplified one-line consolidation method. Which really leaves us with a highly provocative thought to end this explainer on. If fair value, particularly when backed by rock-solid level 1 inputs, is ultimately more transparent and way more adaptable to the realities of modern business, are the equity method's days actually numbered? It's a profound question about the long-term evolution of financial reporting. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the standards.